Hello and welcome to the Digital Workspace Works podcast. I'm Ryan Purvis, your host, supported by our producer Heather Bicknell. In this series you'll hear stories and opinions from experts in the field, stories from the front lines, the problems they face and how they solved them, the areas they focused on from technology, people and processes to the approaches they took that will help you to get to the grips with the digital workspace inner workings.
Hey Ryan, how's it going?
Frustrating. So I am still struggling with my camera. There we go, got it working slightly. And now I can't get my microphone to work. So I've built a new laptop using Kubuntu, which I've managed to get Teams onto. Mm-hmm. Once I can solve OneDrive, which is not essential, but I just like to synchronize things locally. And find a good email client, I think I will start switching over.
Yeah.
So it's nice. Everything's quick. Only thing I lose is my fingerprint recognition. So you can't log in with your fingerprint. You can see the camera's frozen again.
Yep. Yeah, it'll be interesting to try this with the Linux.
Well, Teams only recently, I don't know how long ago, but it is definitely recent, has issued a Linux client. And that's like, if I look at my essentials, I need Teams, a laptop. I'm going to try LibreOffice for everything else. I mean, worst case to worst, I'll just work off my iPad. But I'm definitely feeling that the Kubuntu distribution is a lot more stable than Windows 10.
Mm-hmm. So what are you giving up with that move? Is it mostly just, software and hardware compatibility is, less than Windows?
Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest issue at the moment. So my frustration is, one, I think the performance of Windows 10 is definitely slower and slower daily. I noticed things like when I try to open my calendar in Outlook, it takes a good couple of seconds, if not a minute, to load the calendar. As I said, I've had these hardware issues. So what I've noticed in comparison is that the Linux version boots a lot quicker, maybe because it's a new machine. But it definitely doesn't have any of the lag. Okay, fair, I haven't got an Outlook equivalent running yet, so I'll have to see how that works. But it's about the apps. What apps do you need that's Windows only? If I look at what I use Slack, I use Teams, I use the Office products. So those all have Linux equivalents. The things that I'll need to figure out will be sort of dev tools like SQL and Visual Studio, but I think that those now exist. So this will be a journey. I'll run them in parallel to begin with, and then as I find something, I'll move that over. Mm-hmm. But my next step, if this doesn't work, is to go to an Apple laptop, some sort of Apple. Mm-hmm. But I think my journey with Windows 10, unless I'm forced to use it, I think it's at the end. Mm. So yeah, you heard it first, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of struggles. Yeah, I haven't read it yet, but there was one of those IT news sites, I don't remember, but an article about how IT admins want the updates to go down to one a year. I don't know if you've ever had, what your feeling is about the sort of Windows as a service, evergreen IT, frequent patching, if that's ever caused you headaches from IT. Yeah.
It does. And last year was a lot better. This year's gotten worse, much worse. Mm-hmm. I think it's there's too much variety of hardware to be supported for Windows to be rolled out as quickly as they want it to be. Mm. And I think the only route this is going to work, and that's maybe why WVD is so top of mind for everyone, is that is a controlled environment where you can roll it out, weekly, monthly, whatever, because it's known entities. And I would agree. I mean, I think if you've got a real estate of a couple hundred to a couple thousand laptops or physical workstations, you don't want to keep patching these things with major updates as regularly as Microsoft's pushed them out at the moment, because it creates a lot of overhead and for very little value. I mean, the stupidity of this 2004 release, it didn't work with any drive that was encrypted. So the minute you had a BitLocker or whatever thing on top of it, you had to basically decrypt the drive to run the install.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what's the point?
Yeah.
Might as well format the device. So,
Yeah.
so I think that's the route it's going to go. I think it's going to end up with the Microsoft's going to have to listen to their customers and go to once a year, back to what it was really. In fact, it's better than, you know, I think you look at OSs, they're probably released on every 2-year basis. And then WVD will become your rapid iteration environment.
Yeah. We'll see.
Yeah, it's come up a few times. I mean, there's another podcast I listen to, Windows Weekly, and they sort of make the same sort of rumblings that there's definitely a lot of pain being experienced, and it seems like the only solution is WVD for this.
It's interesting.
Yeah, and I'm not saying critical updates shouldn't happen, and I'm not saying, you know, security patches. Yeah. But I am saying functionality changes like they're doing right now. It's not. I mean, I lost a whole week last week because I'm still nursing this laptop through the week. But if I try and do a face-to-face call with anybody, it's what you see now, a frozen face. It's frustrating.
Yeah, definitely. Especially in when your remote workspace is your whole workspace. So, you know, the only face-to-face you're going to get with anybody is through your laptop camera. So
yeah, and I know I'm bitching about it, but you know, when you set up your whole workspace to be driven from the single laptop, and the laptop is your single failure point because it's running Windows, and Windows has gone less and less stable. It does frustrate you because now you've got to you don't really know move your works. It's like moving your desk. You know, it's full of stuff. All the drawers are full of stuff, and you know, going to a new desk means you got to clean out all those drawers. Which is a good exercise. You should do more of it, but you don't want that's an ominous. It's like, that's so much effort, so much work. I've got enough to do with my life, let alone do that as well. So, and that's where I am now. So that's why I've installed this new laptop. I'm slowly moving stuff across that needs to be moved across, and that's why I'm relying a little bit on OneDrive, because I'm putting it all into OneDrive and hoping it synchronizes across. And then it's not as big a deal. I mean, the beauty of some of the setup is I rely quite heavily on LastPass for my password management. And it sets me up quite easily over everything else. But it's still a hack to do it.
Yeah.
So the other thing I wanted to talk to you about was the book I just finished reading called Masters of Doom.
Masters of Doom?
Masters of Doom. You know, remember the game Doom?
Yes, I don't know much about it, but yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a generational thing. So when I was growing up, so this would have been the 80s and 90s, Doom was the big thing. And I really got into gaming to an extent when Quake 3 came out. I mean, I played Doom and I played Wolfenstein and I played Duke Nukem when they came out, in South Africa, which was a little bit behind everywhere else in the world. But these were, you needed to have a 486 processor with a graphics card to play Quake. And, back in the day when all that stuff was, very resource intensive, I mean, you could probably run most of these games on a Raspberry Pi now. But it was quite fascinating to read how these guys started off. I mean, they really developed, it was two Johns, John Carmack and John Romero. They really built these games when there was nothing around. Like there was no graphics engines. They were using 16-bit color, and then they moved to 206 colors, and now we're in the millions and millions of colors. But how they figured out shading and light, point of view lights, and I was thinking how that led up into virtual reality and augmented reality, because that's this is the precursor. Games have been the precursor that have almost been like the Formula One is for motor cars. Games lead the way in generating compute so that you can do things, and that feeds back into normal work compute. You buy a big gaming machine so that you can play games, but it benefits you also because you can write code and you can work effectively with your knowledge worker stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's just a story of what it took for them to build the game.
So it's not just a game. So they, I mean, this follows them over probably a 20-year journey. So how did they start off being, what they were like as kids? So John Carmack is a very I would also say he's a Steve Wozniak type character, very techie, very, very open source, share everything, that kind of person. And then Romero, I wouldn't just say he's a Steve Jobs like, because he's a bit more mental than that. But he's the visionary. He's the perfect yin and yang to each other, in the sense that Carmichael can deliver these things technically, and Romero can keep changing the game and pushing him to test his or drive better technical solutions. And then basically go from Doom, how they were a bunch of kids in a house, and they were basically ate a lot of pizza, drank a lot of Diet Coke, and worked all hours to deliver this stuff. Mm-hmm. And how they sort of navigated making, moving across the US from one city to another to establish themselves by partnering. So they end up with using shareware to deliver the product. I mean, this was, in those days, it was still about, using floppy disks and mailing them out using Ziploc bags and that sort of stuff, mm-hmm. to then releasing Doom via a university labs connection to the world, so you could download Doom, and then how they basically split off from each other because they had different visions. Romero wanted to be this build an empire, and Carmichael wanted to build better games, but keep it tight and share the technology and all that kind of stuff, and how they basically went their different ways, and then came back together. And it just tells you all the politics and all the rest of it. But what I find interesting from my point of view is you had sort of these two schools of thought, where one was keep the team small and structured to deliver on a vision, and you had another one where they're just throwing resources and money with no vision and just expecting magic to happen. And the sort of delayed, and there's these big events where they rock up and Carmack's engine with his game looks great, and Romero, because they've split off now, is trying to show his thing, that he's hyped up and he's thrown millions of, in the sense of 80, 90 people working on all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing, it's like this anticlimactic demo that hardly works. And it's how they, it's just, the story is really well told. But it is how you can see some projects will fail because you throw in more resources at the wrong time, or you think that by having lots of resources you magically have a product, and you don't. It's constantly about prioritization and keeping focus and all that kind of stuff. And you see it often where projects take on too much, or there's too many different agendas, and they fail to deliver.
Have you seen the show Silicon Valley?
I started watching, but I never got into it. Okay.
Just sounds like something that would happen on the show.
Very, very possible. Very possible. Another little bit of interesting trivia on this one. I actually think I've got a relative that's mentioned in the book.
Oh.
Yeah, so I'm not going to mention who it is yet, but we're chatting on LinkedIn. We're trying to figure it out. Back to our Russian heritage.
Interesting.
No. So that's a good book that I've just finished, and then I'm rereading The Goal at the moment, which is also quite a good book for product delivery. I'm not sure if you've ever read it. But also story form, although it's a fictional story this time, where it tells a story of a factory owner and how his factory is under pressure to, if it doesn't sort things out in 3 months, it'll be closed down. And he's got this crazy physicist mentor who basically helps him see the real problems and solve them. And it's basically, he's trying to teach the law of constraints. You can only deliver how much you've got, based on what you've got, and you need to figure out where your bottlenecks are, and then correctly organize your priorities based on what your bottlenecks can cover, and then deliver what your priority needs are. So your customers, in the case of the factory, the orders that are the oldest that need to be dealt with, to the youngest, but then also based on what skills and resources you have. So very much a product delivery book.
Is it more on the illustrate the theory than like tactical side?
It's a bit of both. It's, the theories. It's actually funny you say, because I was reading something this morning, and I said, I just wish they'd give me just the theory and not give me the whole story, because I've read the book before now. So this is my second or third time reading it. He tries to articulate the story or the theory through the story. So, for example, this thing about sequencing. The main character, Al, takes his son on a scout hiking trip for the weekend, and he's got all the kids walking in line. But because of the way that the kids are ordered, the fastest kids are way ahead and the slowest kids are way at the back, and there's a big gap between everybody. And he has to realize that through this whole process that he needs to put the slowest kid at the front, which means that no one can walk faster than the slowest resource. Mm-hmm. So no one, I think he'd finish, faster than the slowest component that has to be built. So that's how you sort of articulate the theory or whatever, which is quite a nice way to do it. To articulate, but being a factory is a very different. Like, I'm struggling at the moment to try and map that back to building software, and that's what I need to go. I think someone did mention to me there's a cartoon or a comic version of it where it's actually delivered. It's how you deliver software using this law of constraint. I need to find it. So that's kind of where I am now.
Mm-hmm. Just a shortcut.
I mean, the story is good for color, but I want to apply it at the moment, so I need the shortcut. Yeah, the abridged version.
Yeah.
I've just put a link into the Slack thing, which is it came out today on the Guardian newspaper. It's a survey that was done for the UK. And just saying that basically it's changed everything for good. Basically, most office workers don't tend to go back to 5 days a week in the workplace when this COVID thing is over. Not that I think it'll ever be over, to be honest, but hey. But it kind of, confirms what we've been saying for a good month or three, that it'll move to a 2 to 3 days break,
mm-hmm.
hybrid, depending on who you are, where you are. So that's quite interesting. And I think it points out the generational differences. Young employees will see it differently to older employees because the younger ones are still trying to build their relationships and have more ambition. And also don't have the facilities at home to work from home. Whereas an older generation will probably have already got the networks, has already got a good setup at home, and they can work from home a lot easier.
Yeah. I mean, I think home ownership and the comfort of working from home probably go hand in hand a bit.
Yeah. Anyway, I need to jump off. Good to catch up. Cool. I'll catch you later.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Heather Bicknell is our producer and editor. Thank you, Heather, for your hard work on this episode. Please subscribe to the series and rate us on iTunes or the Google Play Store. Follow us on Twitter @the DWW Podcast. The show notes and transcripts will be available on the website www.digitalworkspace.works. Please also visit our website www.digitalworkspace.works and subscribe to our newsletter. And lastly, if you found this episode useful, please share with your friends or colleagues.